Hello my friend, welcome to the channel. In today's code block, we will have a design discussion on the project unpartial. Unpartial is a TypeScript project that exposes one simple function called unpartial to unpartial a partial object. You can see in the example on the screen that the unpartial can take in a default config and then also a given config which is a partial, and then it returned a config which will be typed the actual interface config, so then you can use it with type safety. So the question I have right now is supporting a optional second argument. The reason being that when I'm using it on the CLI builder, I find that I want to use it to merge a partial default config and then a config read from JSON, and then also the argument that passed in by the user on the command line. So because the configuration file might not present when the command is executed, the config could be a undefined value. So when I am designing this unpartial library, originally I have this test saying when the base, the first argument is undefined, it will return undefined. And also in this case, the more relevant is the second part of it, is when I have a super base, which is the first argument, and then the second argument, which is the base, is undefined. I expect it to undefined. And the reason is although in my interface, in the unpartial interface, I do not expect it to be undefined. Right, so you can see here is base of t. It doesn't expect it is an undefined value, and you can also see here if I remove it, it will actually say it is an error. Right, the TypeScript would complain and tells you that oh, you are not supposed to pass in an undefined value. And so when I am writing the library for this test, I quote in this is for JavaScript only, because the TypeScript already got against it. So the original intent is to avoid unexpected behavior, because when you're using it, when I originally designed it, I do not expect that to be undefined, and so if you pass undefined in, I want to make sure that you get something undefined so that you can catch the error early. But in this case, it is possible it to be undefined, and I need to rethink about this decision. Is that the right decision to be made over here in this unpartial package, or in the CLI package I just have to handle it accordingly? So this is a pretty common question. It is about how clear do you understand the requirement of the code when you are writing it. When we are writing the code, a lot of times we make our best guess and we try to handle it the way that we think it should be handled, and of course that's the only thing we can do, right? And writing the code in TDD or just writing tests help us to get a better understanding on the requirement. That's why writing tests is good. However, that still does not cover all the case, and this is a very good example of it. Also, this touches on the difference between undefined and null, and then the general question of the complexity or the difficulty of properly defining the behavior when the input is undefined or null. So let's see what we can do here. So first of all, I'm going to reproduce this situation so that I can better understand how the behavior looks like. So I am going to mimic it and saying I have some default config over here. Yes, I already have a default config. However, let me create something else because I want to demonstrate a different situation. Let's call it option. Okay, so in the option, I have a require field. Let's say require 1 is a number, and then require 2 is a string, and then optional 1 is a number, and then it is optional, and a optional 2 is a string, and I have a default option. And in this case, instead of defining the require 1 and require 2, I would just saying define require 2 is a string and then just ABC. And the rationale is that I'm working on a command line, and the default option does not give me the whole picture. I do need some form of input from the user, and so which is the require 1. And so I have a config, let's say config from JSON, which normally it will be a object with the require 1 like this. However, in this case, I have a config that doesn't exist. So it's actually undefined. Okay, and I also have some argument that pass in from the user, and the argument is actually some information I want to pass in, right? So say for example the user pass in require 1 equals to 2. Okay, so that's all the input, and then how I would use it is the actual option would equals to unpartial, and then get the default option, and then the null config from JSON, and then also pass in the argument. And I would expect this option to equals to require 1, 2, and require 2 ABC. Right, and you can see that it already complained. And the thing is, over here it is fine, but when I'm reading from the JSON, you don't know that if it is undefined. So now as I wrote this, I realized that in the CLI builder when I was using it, I should have get the JSON config and have it assigned as a type of option or undefined to begin with, so that the error will be apparent where we will see that the unpartial does not take a undefined object. So in a sense, the unpartial is doing what it's supposed to do and everything is fine. However, the question is about the usability of it. So what I mean is, should I change the unpartial to handle also the undefined case? So we can try that out. So let's open the test, start running it, And as I start running, I know that, well, right now this doesn't work, and I would like to make this case can be undefined, right? However, when I do that, you can see that there's an error over here, because after the merge, it will show that because of the type inference, this will also be undefined, because the return type is this T and R. Let's be double checked. So the type of this is object and require equals to 2, right? So the require 2 is from here, and the base is referred to an object, and the reason is because the type of T is start as an object. So that's not what we want. One way to fix this is to explicitly define the interface. So the question is if this is justifiable. So, but over here I noticed that this has already inferred as undefined instead of option undefined. So that's probably mean that is because it gathered that information from this line, because I already assigned it to undefined. So let's change that to a let, because that's what you would do, right? You would the actual code will be say read file sync, and then read the file, and so you won't, and then using a JSON parse, and so you wouldn't assign to undefined straight away. So that's not the actual situation. So after I change that, this is option and undefined, and let's see if I take it away, it will still say option and merging with the type of the default option, which still works fine, right? Still, this is still good. So given that, I may be able to support it. So let's see. Right now, of course, this failed. This is what the problem I was facing. So how would I solve this? In this case, first let's just focus on this case, which is the free argument version. And so I take a look at the free argument, and it is because of this, it is undefined. So I just return the base. So let's try to play golf here. Just remove that and see how it looks like. So in this case, so now the other test change, and when you pass in a undefined over here, now it will get an object, an empty object instead of undefined, right? And that's the behavior for the Lodash. The Lodash doing this, it will get the object. So the question is this still desirable? And I would say, again, this now gets to the design part, and it is a judgment call. And I still want to keep this behavior, because if the user really put in another undefined here, I don't really want it to return an object, right? Because looking at the API, in the API, when you're using it, you're passing this information, and this is from the user, and this normally would not be an undefined value. So I want to make sure that that is not the case. So that's why I have this test, and I put it like this. So then that means that I should fix the code to support that case. Right, so the easiest way to do that is if base is undefined, and partial is also undefined, then return undefined or return base. That's okay, right? So with that, the test should now pass. Oh, it doesn't. It failed the other test case. It's null. One is undefined, one is null. So the question is, when it is null, what should I return? So let's look at the test again. And given my reasoning, this is undefined, and on the other hand, when the partial argument pass in an undefined or null or this, originally I thought it should return undefined. But if that really is a null or is an object, maybe I want to make sure that it will return the same thing. Maybe that's more sensible. I think this makes more sense because the partial argument is actually the primary argument that we want to deal with. But because that's typically what the user's input is, or the consumer's input is when you're writing your function. And so we are keeping the result aligned with its value is a more sensible approach. So I think this is good. Of course, then the test case itself doesn't make sense anymore because it doesn't align to what this does. So let's create a different test case. Is undefined base with returns partial. And let's put this tree over here. Return the partial value. When I write that, then the question is, what if I have some value in the default config in the super base? And the answer to that is it should merge the two, right? Because at the bottom line just shown over here, that's what I would want it to be, right? If you have for the triplet version, when you are using this, you're getting this information from the original package, and your own package doesn't have anything. Oh, not this test. This test. Then when user pass in something, you at least want to get this information. So the test is actually should be undefined base will be ignored, right? And to make sure I get that is, let's say a equals to 1. Well, let's put it in another test. A equals to 1, and then here is b equals to 2. I would expect it to say a1 and b2. Okay? And then when the case it is undefined, I still want it to be undefined. The same for null, because these are two special value. And I don't want to mess around with it and create an unexpected result. So this only apply when it actually looks fine. Then it will do these two cases. Okay, so let's fix that. So to fix it is, well, then simply saying when it is undefined, return unpartial superbase and partial. And I think that should work, I guess. No. It gets an object. Oh, because of base is undefined, and then partial also undefined, and then that will get undefined on the other one. So, but which is okay because we haven't fixed it. So let's fix this. So we are saying that if partial is undefined, and I want to make sure that it is undefined. So actually, instead of checking the base, I could have just checked the partial. Let's just say undefined. Okay, I know it's right now it's a little bit messy, and we will clean it up after the test is passed. So what happened is this one, undefined partial should get base. Okay, so that conflict with another test. Undefined partial will get base. Well, so this is a contradicting requirement. So which one is more correct or more sensible? Because you cannot satisfy both. Or can you? Let's see. If I'm saying this return the base, what will happen? Because in that case, I do get base, but over here, I still get object. This would be ignored. It would call the dual, and then this have a basic object and then an undefined. So it is still a conflict. And in this case, should it really return the base object? And my opinion is no, just like the arguments I have before. So which means I would just delete this test case. Right, and then over here, just undo this to that. Okay, and then now the case is this. This follows the same reason because the undefined, when it is undefined, and this is now a return null. That's why I don't like, undefined and null and empty object and empty string and that kind of thing, because it's quite confusing. You should have only one representation of one. Anyway, so what should we do in this case? And this is also the just to avoid the unintentional error. And as I said, well, when it's undefined, let's change that as undefined, right, to parallel with that. And then this will return an object, and I really don't like it. So this will still get itself over here, so I should do the same thing over here, and the code is getting really messy now. So, oh boy, I get undefined. Why do I get null? No, this shouldn't get null. The partial is undefined, I should get undefined. What's going on here? What's going on here? That doesn't look right. That doesn't look right. So what is incorrect? Let me just take this apart, just testing that one and see what is going on. because based on this code, that's what happened, right? So base partial, right? Null, base is null, partial is undefined. Oh, or what I'm doing. There you go. So undo this, undo this. Oh boy, there's still one more. Still one more, but I get a feeling that we're getting close. So if this undefined object, it should return object, right? Oh, because of is div equal, because we are comparing object right now, no longer just the type. Or although technically you should do something similar, but anyway, over here is different because of the same reason. Okay, so this is just a wrong test now. This should get undefined over here. This is null, and this should get null, and this should get object. Yeah, should get object. It's the same argument, just in case that. Should it be? Should it be? Should it be? Because this case is the super base is also undefined, and this can happen if your the package you consume makes some kind of mistake, or maybe is the typing is wrong. And so in that case, if I return this, it would be hard to debug. Oh boy, so it really would make it hard to debug, and I want to avoid this. And to the new use case I have over here is the same thing. The option in this case, the option, default option is defined by myself. It shouldn't be undefined. However, it is a little bit easier to spot, right? But at the same time, if it's really undefined, I should do something else. And should I even throw an exception, throw an error? I don't know. Well, what I'm going to do right now is change this back to undefined. And if you have any other suggestion, you think, oh, throwing an error in this case is actually a better choice, then let me know. We can discuss on it. So changing that, of course, that will fail some of the tests, and it failed things over here. So what happened is this guy, this failed that code, and the true one, the dual one, line 32, the dual one, this one should be okay. When it is undefined and it is that, what did we just said? If it's undefined or no, if not, if it's undefined or no, it will turn the base. So yeah, that's why I said this is messy, right? So over here, just look back over here. I just want to return the parent when it is the partial when it's undefined. So let's see how this go. And over here, okay, I think we are still making some progress, right? And so the question is, should this be changed, right? So now in JavaScript is you have to assign it, right? It's not like undefined by default when the variable is not assigned, it's by default undefined, right? But when it is null, someone actually assigned it. So the question is, again, this is a debatable requirement on how the code should behave when it is null. Should it behave as the same as undefined, right? And to be honest, I kind of don't care because I don't use null that often, and neither should you, to be honest. So I think it is fine either way. And in this case, right now, I will treat it just as if it is undefined. I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so if I do that, then yep, it will just do this, and then this should be deep equal. And then I think we are getting pretty close. Yes, this is 933, and this is also should be deep equal, and same here. Finally, we get all of them passed. So because of this design issue, it's always messy. So I want to make sure that we are all the test case, all the requirements are consistent. So first of all, this one is fine, I think. So this is the default object doing all that, and so this now I can call it. And also that's one thing I do a lot when I'm writing a test. Sometimes if you have a clear understanding of what requirement is, you can put in some nice description, but a lot of times I find myself need to do some exploration, need to try it out to figure out how the actual code should behave. And in that case, I would just leave the test name empty or the description empty, and then after I figure out that's what it should behave, then I try to fill it back in. So anyway, in this case, will be get this when the default the second argument is undefined, and it will just merge. And I think that is the same case as this guy. Right, the undefined base will be ignored, and it is actually the same case, and we already have it covered, and so I can just delete it. So now the case is this: undefined base will be ignored. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You can see that this is the same. I think I just copy it over. That's why they are the same. So this is fine. Undefined base will be ignored, and then this will be the same. It's the same. It's just that one with 2 arguments and one with 3 arguments. So that's good. And then the null base. This should it be null? I thought it should be, because I was saying that we should keep it the same, right? I want to treat it the same. So the trio one should be this. And then this Why do I stack here? Get a null. Empty base if null. Oh, because of this. Okay, and then get null, return null, line 28. Nah, this is a mistake. Alright, so that's more consistent. So I treat the null and I define the same, and it will be the same description also, but I will keep it, in two separate tests, just in case that later on in the future I think that, oh, that is actually a they should have different behavior. Although I doubt it. But if you guys have some good idea also and some good argument, feel free to bring it up, and if it makes sense, then we will do some adjustment. So undefined in this case now is, it will return undefined, right? This is really avoiding any unintended error. And then the null super base return null, it will be the same, right? Same as that. That's fine. Pay cannot be modified. We haven't changed anything. Not modified. That's fine. Unpartial is optional. Just need to make sure that yes, that is still the case. Specify target interface explicitly. That still works fine. So we are, after all these chaotic changes, the tests are good. So the last thing to do is the refactoring, and let's see what we can do about it. If it's undefined now, return base, that's okay. Do the same thing over here, that's okay. And then if the partial do the same thing, it's okay. And actually it seems like after all the changing, messing up around, it's get back to a relatively clean situation. So yep, I think it is good, and I do not want to deal with if this case is undefined, as I said, so we will keep it as is. Alright, so that would be the end of this code block. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you agree with some of the change that I've made, and if you have any suggestion, feel free to contact me. Alright, and we will see you next time. Bye bye.